All right. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, guys. Welcome to the webinar, SAFE webinar. And the topic for today is PI planning and how to have an effective PI planning event. And of course, the other part of this webinar is ask me anything you have in mind about SAFE. Let's have an open discussion, open forum. It really helps understand those things. So guys, thank you for being on camera. Whoever is on camera, thank you. Appreciate that. Just to introduce quickly about myself, I've got, my name is Kumaresh Krishnamurthy. You can call me Kumar or KK, however you feel like. I've got 21 years of IT experience, started my career as a hardcore developer, C, C++, Unix, Oracle, Java, Fortran, Pascal, COBOL, you name it, I was there. It was very interesting. Ketan, you look familiar. We met, right? Yeah, good, nice. Great. So, and that's how I started my career. So it was a very interesting journey for me when I was working as a technical guy. I was working both in waterfall and the agile environment, but I just had to focus on my work, that's all. And then I became a technical architect, and then I was pushed onto management, literally pushed onto management. Why? Because I was PMP certified. I got PMP certified, and immediately management looked at me and said that, oh, you're PMP certified, go and manage a project. So that's how I stumbled upon management, but there was no looking back from then on. It was a very interesting journey for me. I really enjoyed management. So project management, business analyst, and so on. Again, managing projects in that world, then moved on to the agile world to manage projects as a scrum master, lead project, should I say, as a scrum master, product owners, agile coach, and all those things. But we had our own challenges in agile world. So that's when we realized that, oh, we need to scale agile. So SAFE came as a blessing in disguise. I've been in SAFE for almost 4 or 5 years right now. It's been wonderful for me out there. I'm very passionate about Agile and very passionate about SAFE. That's why even my background is SAFE. I have a SAFE background. It's wonderful to have that perspective in terms of understanding how to be truly agile. And that's when we realize that it's not just team level agility which is important, it's enterprise level agility which is required. We just don't want the teams to be agile. And a lot of times that's what is happening. A lot of times we have seen that the teams are trying to be agile, but business is still, management is still thinking in a waterfall fashion, the traditional fashion. So there is a big disconnect, there's a big gap between these two worlds, and that is why the teams are trying to be agile, but the organization is fragile. I've heard that before, right? So that's the idea. At least I've seen the transformation when I do the agile transformation from waterfall to agile to scaled agile. It's very important that the leadership support, the leadership buy-in is there, and they understand what it is that they must do. So with that quick introduction about myself, this webinar is presented by IBC, International Business Consultants. So we have been in the market for a while. We are gold partners to SAFE as well. So we just wanted to start to share our knowledge with others as well. That is one of the reasons I do these webinars, just to help and have discussions and meet new people, all right? Try and see if you can come on camera. I would appreciate that, but at least, if not, at least have conversations. So we just want to make it more, kind of a discussion rather than just me talking, all right? Any questions, anyone? Good, all right. So first and foremost, let me understand the audience. All right. So I want to launch a poll right now. Lots of polls are going on, I know, in the US. Okay, by the way, I'm based out of Toronto in Canada. So I'm just observing the polls. Oh, you too? Can't hear you. Sorry, you're on mute. That's okay. Okay, I'm trying to do lip reading. That's okay. So anyway, so I'm based out of Toronto, and I'm just watching the news about the polls that's going on. So really interesting, really nail biting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch this poll right now for you. Okay, so please, it looks like there are around 16, 17 people right now. I hope more can join. But very simple questions. How would you rate your experience in Agile? How would you rate your knowledge in SAFe? And third question is, which other frameworks are you familiar with? That's all. So very simple, just to understand the audience better. That's the main intention. All right. So, guys, if you just joined, welcome. And I just launched a poll. Just if you could answer the questions, it would be great. All right. 57% have voted. Oh, wow. Quickly, if you can do that, I'll just give a couple more seconds for you to vote. Three very simple questions. It's anonymous, so you don't have to worry about what you're voting. So what you're choosing. So this is, all right, 68% have voted. Guys, if you just joined, please, thank you for joining and please vote. Video interaction would be great. If you can come on camera, I would really appreciate that. Please, it's okay. Thanks, Priyanka. You're the best. Thank you. Guys, please, would request if you can come on camera just for some more time. All right, so I'll just give 10 more seconds and then I'm gonna end the poll. Thanks, Tamanpreet. Great. Okay, so ending the poll now. Okay, I'll share the results with you guys. This is what we have in the group. So, okay, many of you are familiar with Agile. Fantastic, great. Some of you, a couple of you are new to Agile. Okay, this really helps, right? The poll helps me understand the audience as well. How would you rate your knowledge in SAFe? Many of you are a 2. Nobody will judge you on your appearance. Exactly. Thank you, Will. If you can turn on your camera, please. I would really appreciate that. Thanks, Will, for pushing that as well. So SAFe, there are, okay, good. I can see quite a few people who are familiar with SAFe. Fantastic. And all right, there are a few people. Scrum, everyone is aware of Scrum. And okay, this is great. Thank you. Okay, this is the first poll. Now I know the audience. I know that you have familiarity with SAFe, and that is why you are here to understand how to do an effective PI planning event. Now, talking about PI planning, first and foremost, I would like to do the next poll. Okay, and then we will get into PI planning. So the next poll is to understand what are the challenges you are facing. All right, so we are all here to learn and engage in discussions to understand how to have an effective PI planning. But most importantly, the only way we will be able to address those things is by understanding the challenges that we face at work. Okay, so there are 2 questions here again. What are the general challenges that the teams are facing or the business is facing? And the second question is, what are the challenges in case you have been part of PI planning, if you are familiar with PI planning, if you have been part of it, if you have faced any challenges, you can answer the second question as well. Okay. Maximum 3 choice. All right. So these are some of the common challenges that people face. So I just wanted to share these common challenges with you guys to know, are these the same challenges you're facing as well? Okay. Of course, you don't just have to pick from what you have. If you have something other than these, feel free to call out. Okay. Maximum 3. Okay. Don't select everything that every challenge is. Pick the 3 most biggest challenges that you're facing today. Maximum 3. Okay. I'll just give 1 more minute. Again, if a request, if it's possible for you to come on camera, I appreciate it. See, I'm all dressed up, a nice coat and all those things. You don't have to be. So, Baral, thank you. My man, awesome. A big shout out to you guys, man. People who are on camera, thank you. Big shout out to you guys. So, 55% have voted. All right. All right. So 65%. Right. Anyone else? Am I waiting for anyone? Okay. 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Ending the poll. Sharing the results. So this is what we have. Okay. So many people have selected a lot of things, but the biggest problem is problems discovered too late. Many of you have selected that. That has become the #1 issue. But everything is there. So I don't see anything which is zero. So the first is 54%. The second is 46%, too little visibility. 31%, 31, quite a few 31% actually. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them are at 31%. All right. What about the PI planning? Tight deadlines. Okay, that is the biggest one. 38% of you. Well, okay. Second place, there are 3, a tie for 3 things. Roles and responsibilities are not clear. Too many dependencies to deal with. Requirements are created during PI planning through workshops. Okay. All right. So, perfect. I'm going to stop sharing the results. Okay, perfect. Thank you for sharing your thoughts out here. It's very important for us to understand and recognize the challenges, and then we can address those things. Okay, so not to take more time and coming right on the topic. PI planning is the heart and soul of SAFE. I'm sure many of you recognize that. But we need to do PI planning well. If we don't do PI planning well, the whole exercise of SAFE has gone for a toss. And that is why these are the 5 inputs which is required, I believe. And when I try to do the transformation, I try to use these 5 inputs which are required before you have your PI planning event. So usually I go with these 5 numbers, and that is the main thing I wanted to share with you as well. So what is the first input to PI planning event? So preparing for PI planning is extremely important. If you don't prepare for PI planning, the whole PI planning can go for a toss. So we cannot just say that one fine day we wake up in the morning and say, oh, let's do PI planning. You know, SAFE is fantastic. Let's get into it. And then there will be chaos. So that is why we need to understand how do we prepare for PI planning event and make it an effective PI planning event. So before I get into the 5 inputs, let me ask you a question. What are the roles at the program level, right? Essential layer can be divided into team and program, right? So if you think about that part, subdivided into team and program. So what are the roles at the program level? Can anyone just talk it out? Just say it. What do you think? What are the roles?
RTE.
Sorry, Vivek?
RTE.
RTE, wonderful. And then?
Product manager.
Product manager, okay. And?
Product owner, Scrum Master.
At the program level. This is what you said, Lushnak is absolutely right, but it's more at the team level. I'm looking from the program level. So program
Oh,
level
okay.
and team level are part of essential, right? So one is RTE, product manager, and
System architect.
system architect. Exactly. Thank you, Amanpreet. So these are the three most important roles that is required to have which are part of the program level. Now, the first and foremost, we need to understand why are these three roles important. Okay, for any product or project to be successful, okay, I believe that there are three areas they need to focus on: functional, technical, and process. If you focus on these three areas, you will be able to deliver the value to the customer successfully. All right. So these are the three key areas, and that is why the three roles actually cater to these three areas. All right, functional, technical, and process. So, and the program level, we have product manager takes care of functional, the system architect takes care of technical, and the RTE, which is release train engineer, takes care of the process. Okay. Now, keeping these three roles in mind, I'm going to talk about the 5 inputs to PI planning. All right. The first input to having an effective PI planning program backlog, or should I say prioritized program backlog. Okay, that is the first input to have an effective PI planning event. If you don't have a program backlog, or prioritized program backlog, then you cannot even think of having a PI planning event. Now, who do you think owns this program backlog? Out of the three roles that we saw, who owns the program backlog?
Product
product
manager.
Product manager, exactly, right? So that is the first input. Now, again, it has to be prioritized, which means, okay, by the way, what does the program backlog contain?
Features,
Features and
stories, enablers.
features and enablers. Okay, so the program backlog contains features and enablers, not stories. Stories are part of the team backlog. All right. So features and enablers. So that is why product manager, they are the ones who create the features. Okay, but what about the enablers? Enablers are nothing but technical stories, right? Which is required to be part of the definition of done. So the feature is not complete till the definition of done is reached, right, or understood. Now, what is the definition of done? A lot of times features are functional, but there are a lot of technical aspects which are required to make sure the feature is complete. The non-functional requirements, there is a lot of infrastructure which needs to be set up. Documentations, the compliance, exploration, the prototyping, all those things have to be done for the work to be complete, the value to be delivered completely to the customer. So that is why the product manager has to work along with the system architects to define what goes into the program backlog. And of course, it has to be prioritized using the concept of WSJF, weighted shortest job first. If you remember the same concept of how do you prioritize the work? It's very important concept of WSJF, weighted shortest job first. Okay, that is one of the prioritization techniques. There are other prioritization techniques as well, but this is what is recommended by SAFe. Okay, so that is the first input. Prioritized program backlog owned by the product manager in collaboration with the architects. All right. Okay. The second input is the architectural runway. You understand the architectural runway? You can see the big picture behind me, right? So probably you can see the architectural runway as well. So the architectural runway is the second input, which I believe is required. You know what? Let me do this. Let me make my picture big, just to make sure I can do something like, what the weatherman does. Weather channel. Aha, this is good. All right. So where is the architecture runway? There you go. So this is the architecture runway. And you can see that it's very important that the teams understand what a runway is. Can anyone talk about the architectural runway quickly? Very briefly, anyone? Okay. So the idea is making sure, see, what happens in PI planning is the teams are expected to deliver the work, right? After the PI planning is done, the teams are expected to start delivering the work using sprints, through iterations. But what happens is the teams are ready to do them, very excited, very enthusiastic. But when they are doing it, they soon realize that, oh, the environment is not ready yet, so they cannot deploy the code. Oh, the database is not there, and the database has some configuration issues, or maybe they don't have data yet, right? So these are some of the challenges that they face. So the thing is, if the architectural runway is not there, then work cannot proceed. There are a lot of bottlenecks. So you understand, we speak about a train, right? What is the train called? The train is called agile release train, right? Now the train, technically, if you think about the actual train, runs on what? The train runs on tracks, rails. So if the rails are not there, how will the train move? Similarly, if the architectural runway is not there, how can the team deliver value to the customer? So this is very important that technical folks, the architects, understand that the architectural runway is in place for whatever work needs to be done for that PI. Again, having said that, there has to be a caution, right? The caution is, don't commit to a design too far. Don't commit to a design too far. That is something the architects have to be understood. They need to realize as well, because what happens is sometimes architects say that, oh, we understand the requirements, perfect, don't worry, we will take care of it. So now they will understand the requirements, what was defined initially by the customer, and they will construct the rails, they will lay the tracks all the way till the end. But guess what happens? The requirements change. Once the requirements change, will your network, will your infrastructure, architecture, whatever your design, will it support the change? That is the question, right? So a lot of times what happens in this situation is, either we will say that, oh, sorry, the architecture is already defined, right? The infrastructure is already laid. Now, any changes, we cannot support that, right? So either you compromise on the requirements, or you compromise on the design, or you have to change whatever you build. That is why there are two things out here. So the second part is architecture runway has to be there, okay? But the architects should not commit to a design too far. They just have to know how much work needs to be done. So probably the architects, so the infrastructure team could be one PI ahead than the actual team, 1 or 2 PIs ahead. Of course, the situation, the companies, and the design, the existing architecture, what's happening. So keeping that in mind, this is the second input which is required. Now, who owns the second input of architecture runway? Who owns the second input?
Technical team, architect.
It's system architects, right? That is the role. The system architects, they are the ones who own it. So that is the second input for having a effective PI planning event. The third input is education and training. Now think about this. How many people attend PI planning generally? In a company, if you say that, oh, let's have PI planning event. How many people actually attend PI planning? Everyone, around 100 people, right? Because whoever is part of this train, agile release train, should ideally be attending the PI planning event. So you need that the developers, the testers, the architects, the business, the customers, the infrastructure team, the vendors, the finance team, all those people who, if you are the stakeholder, you better be part of this train, isn't it? You better be part of PI planning. Because the idea of PI planning is everyone is under the same roof and everyone is having the same focus about value delivery for that particular quarter. That is the focus. So you cannot say that I have some other meeting. There is no other meeting. This is the most important meeting. You have to be here, right? So the idea is about 100 people might join. the PI planning event. But the challenge is, a lot of times people attend PI planning without understanding what the framework is, without understanding what the purpose of PI planning, without understanding what is their roles and responsibilities during PI planning and after PI planning. So how to make PI planning effective is the third, is very important, is education and training. Every single person who is going to attend PI planning event need to understand what the framework is all about. They need to understand the purpose behind the event. They need to understand their roles and responsibilities during the PI planning event and after PI planning during the PI itself. So even if you give them a 2-hour overview or a 1-hour overview, it's okay, but it has to be done. Because even if there is one person who doesn't understand why they are there in the meeting, that one person can become a distraction for the whole group, and you don't want that. Okay, so that is the third input I always try to go with to have an effective PI planning. Now, who owns the third input out of the roles, the 3 roles? Tell me.
RTE.
RTE, exactly. RTE, a vital role, right? So it's important to understand the role of an RTE is 5 times more difficult than the role of a Scrum Master. You know, absolutely, the role of an RTE is very important and very critical. And that's one thing. All right. So this is the third input. The fourth input. All right. Now, a lot of times what happens is during PI planning, what I've seen is the product, the features are broken into stories during PI planning. All right. Of course, that's going to take a lot of time. You know, if you want to break out the features into stories during PI planning, it's going to take a lot of time, right? So that is why it's always advisable, at least that's what I always plan for, is you need to break the features into initial stories before PI planning begins. All right. So by doing that, there are 2 purposes which is served. One is you get a kickstart, you get a head start during PI planning with the stories which are already ready for you to start using, and you can start building on it. That is the first thing. And the second thing, advantage, is the teams become familiar with the work that they need to do, right? Or plan during PI planning. It's very important that the teams are already familiar with the work. Make sense? So this is always I try to do, and making sure the features are broken down into initial stories. The word initial is very important. You don't want to break down the features into all the stories and say that we are done with breaking features into stories. No, that's an anti-pattern. The idea is you need a head start, but you don't want to go into PI planning with a rigid mindset. So if you say that we will break down the features into all the stories and we get into PI planning, if a change comes, you will say that, oh, no. We cannot add new stories or delete anything. We have already planned for this before. So you cannot go into PI planning with a rigid mindset. And that is one of the reasons I always use this word, initial stories. So when you have the initial stories, you give yourself the head start, but at the same time, you give yourself the flexibility to add new stories and enablers during PI planning, because that's going to happen. You like it or not, that's going to happen. And that's how it has to be. That is the purpose of PI planning. So who do you think is responsible for breaking the features into stories? Who is
Product owner.
Product owner.
Owner. Exactly, right? The POs, they are the ones who have to break down the features into stories, of course, in collaboration with others as well. It's not that they do it all by themselves, alone, sitting inside a corner. No, it's always a collaborative effort, right? All right. Any questions, anyone? All right. So this is the fourth input. The fifth input is having high-level dependency chart. What I mean is, a lot of times we have the features, right? Probably the program backlog will have the features and enablers, the top 10 features, top 20 features, top 5 features, whatever it is, right? So that is what you have. But we also need to understand how these features are kind of connected to each other. Again, we don't want to do a deep dive to understand the dependencies between all the features. We cannot do that. We should not be doing that. But we need to at least have a high level idea, high level understanding of how these features depend on each other, right? Support each other. So that is why high level dependency chart. And when you get into PI planning, of course, you need to build upon those dependencies to come up with more detailed dependencies between the stories and the features and all those things. So through the program backlog, through the program board, you can actually start building those things during PI planning. So this is the fifth input I always try to go with. Of course, there is no one group or one person who is responsible for this, because the dependency could be a functional dependency or it could be a technical dependency. So either ways, it's important to recognize those dependencies and be part of it. So these are the 5 inputs. I just wanted to share it with you because I've seen chaos. I've learned from it, and we have improved on it. And usually when I use these 5 things, it's the formula for success, at least for me. And I hope it works for you as well. Anything you want to share? Any thoughts? Anything from your experience? Feel free to speak up. Does it make sense?
Mhm.
All right.
I have a quick question, Kumar.
Yes, please.
Before going to the PI planning, is a team should have any understanding or good information about these art or
Yes.
program backlog.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yes, absolutely. They need to understand not only what the process is, they need to understand the framework, they need to understand the roles and responsibilities. That is one of the inputs I mentioned. And also they need to understand what work needs to be done. What is the vision? I mean, at least they need to be aware of the work. So people who are going to go into PI planning, they need to be mentally, psychologically, emotionally, physically be present out there. It should not be a surprise for them that, oh my God, what's going to happen? So they should be prepared for the PI planning event from all angles. Okay. See, that's why we need dedicated people to work towards preparing for PI planning. It's very important to have that. So now what I'm gonna do is, you can still ask me questions, but I'm just being mindful of the time. I'm gonna share one of the tools that we use for PI planning. I'm gonna put it out there. I'm gonna share it with you right now. Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
Awesome. So this is okay. So this is basically piplanning.io. This is one of the tools which can be used. There are so many tools, but I just wanted to share this with you. So I'm just going to log in and show you how this works. So this is one of the tools we use for our sessions. Okay. Now, when I go to one of these teams, look at this. This is what we have. Okay, so we have multiple teams, and this is what we can see. Now, when I go to backlog, look at this. When I go to backlog, what do you get? Program backlog, right? Now, what does program backlog contains? It contains features and enablers. So this is what we have. These are the features, right? So every feature is defined out here. And what does these numbers represent? Can anyone guess what these numbers represent? 10, 9, 8.
Estimates.
Business value.
Not estimate. Sorry, Sundar.
Business value.
Not business. Okay, not business value.
That is the weight. They've weighted first.
Exactly. It is WSJF, value, weighted shortest job first. So you prioritize these features based on WSJF, weighted shortest job first. And higher the WSJF value, higher the priority, right? And based on that, so you come up with these numbers. So that is why you know, because higher the WJF, higher the priority. I just gave some random numbers out here. So this is what we have. 10 means high WJF, which means highest priority. So flexible search is high priority. And then comes other things. Now, do you notice something, that some of these features are light blue in color, some of them are dark blue in color. The reason for the difference is that the ones which are in light blue, it is not assigned to any team. Do you see this? No team. The ones which are dark blue, it has been assigned to the team. It says team A, team B, right? Now, when I go to the teams, now look at this, all right? Now, when I go to say team C doesn't have any stories or enablers, isn't it? Because nothing has been assigned to them. But when I go to team A, look at this. It already has these things assigned. So it has got a story. You know what? Let me just make it bigger this way. It has got stories. It has got enablers. If you remember, we spoke about enablers. There are 4 types of enablers. In case you're not familiar with it, there are 4 types of enablers: architectural enabler, infrastructure enablers, compliance enablers, and exploration enablers. These are the 4 types of enablers, all right? So when you look at this, this is an exploration enablers, and it is all color coded, okay? And you can have other. So if I want to create an enabler, I just right click, say create a story. Look at this. Look at this. Oh, you can create any sticky for any type through this. Okay, I'm gonna take you through this again in more detail, but I just wanted to show you one more thing before I show these things. So this is team A, as you can see. So team A has got these stories and enablers built in. Of course, as you can see, there are 4 iterations. Within a PI, you can have multiple iterations. So iteration 1, 2, 3, 4. And the 5th iteration is what? The 5th iteration is?
IP.
IP. So look at this. There is IP iteration, isn't it? There is IP iteration here as well. Right? So you have all these things. And of course, you have a place to write your PI objectives and your stretch objectives, or in case you should 5.0, they call it uncommitted objectives. In the previous versions of SAFe, we used to call stretch objectives, but it has been changed to uncommitted. And of course, risk as well. So these are the key things which is required to be part of your PI planning event. And that is what is provided out here through this tool. All right. Now, let me go to team C. All right. Now, team C doesn't have any stories. Why? Because no feature has been assigned to this team. So let me go back to backlog. All right. And now I will assign the first, which is flexible search, the first feature. So I click on no team and I assign it to team C. Took. What happened? Now this became dark blue. Why? Because now it has been assigned to team C. So when I go back to team C, look at this. Before there was nothing, but now look at this now. So automatically this tool interacts and talks to other, other tools like Jira or Rally or whatever you use, right? Git and all those things. So it will automatically talk to those and create stories and enablers, pull them. So it's kind of a 2-way communication between this tool and the ALM tools that you use. Jira and all those things, right? So that is what we have out here. So on the top, you see this capacity and load, the 2 keywords, which is important for PI planning, right? Capacity and load. What is capacity? Capacity is how much work the team can do, or should I say how many story points the team can actually do in an iteration. So that is actually the velocity, right? So the difference between capacity and velocity, can someone tell me what is the difference between capacity and velocity? Any thoughts?
Velocity is the one that team accomplished during that sprint,
Okay.
and capacity is the one. It is a bandwidth or the capability of the team to pick up.
Okay.
Availability.
Interesting. Yes, yes. Thanks. Thanks, Subra. Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
Plan versus actuals.
Plan versus actions.
Actual effort.
Okay, okay, okay. Plan versus actuals. So this is the thing. The difference between velocity and capacity. See, velocity is how many story points can the team actually deliver in a particular iteration. You know, that is the velocity. So how do you get the velocity? By looking at the previous iterations, right? By looking at the previous iterations, you know, okay, the previous iterations, maybe 2, 3, 4 iterations that you have had, how many story points that you actually delivered, isn't it? And you take an average and then say that, okay, this iteration, we can deliver so much. That becomes your velocity. Okay, so velocity is based on your historical data, historical information from your previous iterations. But what if this is the first time the teams are coming up or coming together to deliver value? If this is the first time the teams are coming up, coming together to deliver the value, then how do you come up with a number? You cannot, you don't know your velocity because you don't have historical data, right? And that is when you come up with capacity. So capacity, sometimes you can call it as an approximation of your actual velocity. You have to come up with your capacity initially. Then over the period of time, when you start delivering, you will know what your actual velocity is, right? But the first time you have to come up with something which is a guesstimate, approximation of how many can the team actually deliver. All right, so that's your capacity. So you can put the capacity on the top and the load basically is how many stories that you can actually do out there in that iteration. So capacity and load they have to go hand in hand. So look at this, so beautifully it is done. Now look at this. As soon as I move it, you see the load has changed. One more thing I move, look at this, the load changes more. But if I now put the capacity, for example, as 20, my capacity is 20. As soon as I put is 20, look at this. This became pink and there is an eye popping out. Do you see that? That is a warning sign. That is a warning. So the app gives you a warning that the load cannot be more than the capacity. You're taking too much work. So that's a warning sign, right? Now look at this. In iteration 2, I put this another number. I say probably the same number, say 20 out there. Look at this. There is a check mark. Do you see that? There is a blue check mark that comes in. Make sense? So the idea is the blue check mark says that the load is less than the capacity. I'm good, no problem. But as soon as the load becomes equal to or more than the capacity, the warning sign comes up. So even if I say the capacity is 30, the warning sign remains. That's because the load cannot be equal to the capacity as well. It has to be less. So if I say 31, now look at this. Boom, it changed. Make sense? So that is one more thing I just wanted to share with you, that this tool is very useful that way to help understand what needs to be done. Okay. The next is, if there are a couple of stories which are related to each other, then how do I make sure the relationship is identified, the dependency is identified? Okay, so look at this. Now, when, for example, this story and this story, they are related. So when I click on this, you see this, there is a blue string which comes out, right? See, I'll leave this. As soon as you click on this story, a blue string pops up. So I just have to hold on to this blue string and click on out here. That's it. So there is a dependency. Very simple. It's all visual. Transparency is very important, and that's what it is creating. All right. Now, of course, if I move the what do you call it? Yeah. Okay. So if I don't make it active, right? So the line goes away, but so this is how it is. When I click on it, the line is shown. Otherwise, the line just gets hidden. The line is there, the dependency is there, but it's just hidden, right? So that is one more thing I just wanted to show out there. The next I wanted to show is dependency. Now, this is very well done, beautiful. Now look at this. I right click and I create a new sticky, all right? And I say dependency, right? And I say that I am dependent on team B. Okay. I mean, there has to be a better text out there. Okay. You need to clearly state what the dependency is, but just for the example, I'm just putting it out here. Now I'm just putting it that I'm dependent on team B. Now team C needs to say, okay, there is a dependency with team B, but which story has a dependency? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the story. For example, this story has a dependency. All right. So I select this story, the same link comes in, right? So I select it and put it out there. So I know this story has a dependency on team B. Now, how do I let team B know that team C has a dependency on them? How do I let them know in the virtual world? I have to call them up, or what I can do is look at this. Team C is dependent on, it says no team. You see that? I click on no team and I select team B. Boom. What just happened? Now when I go to team B, okay, look at this. I mean, there are a few other dependencies which are already there, but look at my dependency which came here. See, I am dependent on team B. It popped up automatically with team B. Isn't that wonderful? Now team B know that, oh my God, there is a dependency. Oh, someone raised the dependency. Who raised the dependency? Immediately when they see this, oh, team C has raised this dependency. So either they can go and talk to them and understand how they are dependent on each other. And then they agree. Once they agree, they can say, oh, okay, probably I need to do this work. So they, link the dependency to this. So what I'm trying to say is one of the biggest challenges for any company is underestimated dependencies. And you can easily identify the dependencies using this tool or any other tool that you want to use. And that is very important for PI planning. Make it as transparent as possible. 2019 BC. You understand what is BC, right? 2019, before COVID. People used to go to work. You remember those days, right? And they used to actually use sticky notes. We used to use sticky notes. We used to actually use strings, actual yarn to show dependencies, physical dependencies. So we used to focus on individuals and interactions over processes and tools. That is one of the values of Agile, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. But nowadays we don't have a choice. We have to use tools. Even though we understand individuals and interactions are more important, unfortunately, we are forced to use tools like these, all right? Now, we just have probably a couple more minutes, just a second. All right. The other thing I just wanted to show is the program board. When you go to program, look at this. The program board is out here. It tells you now, for example, it immediately tells you team A has this feature, team B has this feature, team C has this feature. Now you can actually plan it out saying that I'm planning to finish this feature. So team A will say that they are planning to finish this feature in the second iteration. And if they have a significant dependency, they can actually create that dependency and say what is there. So is it a milestone? Is it an event? What is it? Right? So they can put it, all right, dependency or whatever it is, right? So, and then link it up. You can either create a milestone, you can actually create, dependencies, put it out there. So it's very easily trackable in your program board as well. So that is one more thing I just wanted to share. So there are a lot of things. You have Canvas. You can add your Canvas. You can add your risks. out here, you remember ROAM, ROAM? If people who are familiar with SAFE, this is the ROAM board. Is the risk resolved? Is it owned? Is it accepted, or is it mitigated? So this is the ROAM board. You can create risks and put it as program risks, or it could be part of your team risks. So you can just right click and create a risk. As simple as that. And if you can mirror the risks, you can move the risk to another team and so on and so forth. That's something you can do as well. All right, so this is something I just wanted to share with you guys. So the direction of the dependencies. So Will, I can see a couple of questions from you. Is there a way to show the direction of the dependency? There is an arrow which comes up. When you click on it, the arrow comes up. If you see this, it shows the arrow as well. So it goes from here to here. That's why there is a minus sign here, right? So it shows the direction in that way. So wherever there is minus, it starts from there towards the other one. So that is what here it is. And if you, of course, if you can look, there are other ways to look at the dependencies as well. You can do a deep dive to understand how they are dependent. So usually the minus sign is from here. So immediately you see the minus here, right? That's one thing. What was the other question? Is team B dependent on team C to complete a story or vice versa? So in this case, immediately it shows you, right? It says team C is dependent on team B. So team B needs to finish their work first, and then only team C can finish their work. That is how it shows it out here as well. Right. So it's quite self-explanatory in many ways. And of course, you can come and put the objectives, put the business values and all those things out here as well. So that is about PI planning itself. I hope it was useful for you guys. I know it is just 3 minutes more for you to be part of this webinar, but I'm still here. Any questions you have on PI planning, on SAFE, on anything else, I'm here to answer. First and foremost, was it useful? Give me a thumbs up if it was useful for you, this sessions. All right. Guys, thank you on those things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so a couple of things before you start logging off. First and foremost is, if you have any questions, I'm still here. You can ask me. The second thing is, if you want to connect with me to understand or have any questions related to anything you need, this is my this is my LinkedIn and this is my email. All right. So feel free to connect with me if you need anything. And the other thing is, what else? What else want I share with you? Yeah. There are a lot of sessions, of course, SAFE sessions and all those things which is coming up from multiple places. So anyway, the intention is to share whatever we have, the experience, the knowledge, so that you get benefit. Any questions you have? I'm just opening the forum for any questions.
Just because before you sign off, is that a paid tool, the one that you're showing for PI planning? Is that a paid tool or is it a freelancer?
The one I just showed you?
Yeah.
It is, of course, it's a tool, which, of course, everything is paid. It's not a free tool. So there are multiple tools. This is one of the tools I just wanted to introduce during this session, which we have used.
Okay.
Quite effective. And it talks to other LM tools as well.
Thank you.
Yes. In case you guys want to play around with the tool, let me know. Send me an email if you want to play around with the tool. I can probably provide you the user ID and password to just play around for a few days. Okay, if you want to test it out. let me know.
Yeah,
Send me-
Priyanka, I could just add to that I've participated in many of these PI planning type of presentations, and I have seen this tool used the most. And you can see how useful it is. But yes, you can get a 2-week trial subscription, so you can try it for your first PI planning, see how your team likes and adopts it, and then it's a paid service. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for that. In fact, you know what? I'm going to share the details with you guys right now in terms of, okay, so there you go. This is the YouTube link for you to know how to use the PI planning tool itself. So this is the link. I just wanted to share about the tool, but the app, this is the website. Okay. Okay, app.piplanning.io.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else? Any other questions? Nothing? Ready to go? All right. Thank you guys for being part of this webinar. Thanks for your time. And we will see you next time, hopefully. All right. Stay in touch. Take care.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar.
thank you for your time and effort.
Sure.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that was really helpful.
Awesome. Thanks. Cannot hear you. Sorry. All right. Okay, guys. Thank you very much. All right.